Then Sports Central begin you guys our 2024 season predictions for the Michigan State Spartans, a team that went 4-8 overall in the 2023 season, and it's the start of a new chapter in 2024. Jonathan Smith's the new head coach. How's this team going to be in 2024, and what can we expect out of Michigan State in this upcoming season? That's what we'll be talking about here today. We'll be looking at the players this team will be losing and returning and predict their schedule top to bottom in this video. So with that, let's get started. Looking at a quick recap of 2023, once again, the record being 4-8. So kind of a disappointing season for this team, but also, I mean, you got to consider this team went through some really challenging times in late September into October. Things just kind of spiraled out of control, and so I mean this team was 2-6 heading into November. So considering this team did win a couple games in November, it wasn't that terrible of a finish, but obviously when you consider the season start to finish, it was a pretty forgettable season for this team. But with that, looking forward to 2024 now with your roster preview. Caden Hauser is gone. This quarterback situation is being completely revamped. Looking forward to 2024. Noah Kim also gone. Same with Sam Leavitt. So it's up to Aiden Giles coming in from Oregon State. We haven't seen Giles very much. It sounds like he could be a guy with some high potential coming in with Jonathan Smith, who also is coming over from Oregon State, which, by the way, the last couple of years, Oregon State has been a solid team. So I think this team's in really good hands under Jonathan Smith. I think the future is bright for this team, even though things looked pretty dim there for a while in 2023. If you look at the backfield, Nate Carter coming back. He was a strong back last season, 900 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's definitely an end to keep an eye on looking forward to 2024. He could be one of the best backs in the Big Ten, I think. The receiving core, Foster coming back, same with Jaron Glover. Do lose Malik Carr and Trey Mosley, but overall, this is a pretty strong offense, I would say, looking forward to 2024. It has some good experience, which, when you consider, I mean, just having this team revamped in a new chapter under Jonathan Smith, I honestly think this team is not in a terrible position. I mean, they're not going to be a big contender in the Big Ten this season, but I would say I think some are kind of sleeping on this Michigan State team. You look at the defense, I mean, it makes sense for this defense to maybe be in kind of an uncertain position, losing 3 on the D-line, 1 linebacker, 2 in the secondary. So defensively, there's some key losses for sure, but as a whole, this isn't a terrible looking team looking forward to 2024. I don't think this is going to be a great team this season, but I am at least optimistic that this team can make some noise in the Big Ten and maybe pull off a big upset at some point. I really wouldn't be too surprised. You look at the recruiting for this team, 42nd in the country, 13th in the Big Ten, got 6 4-stars and 18 3-stars coming in. But with that, let's take a look at the schedule now as we look forward to 2024. Start off the season on a Friday night against FAU at home, then off to Maryland for week 2. Maryland's not a game to sleep on. I think Maryland this season could be, they're kind of in a similar situation, I think, to Michigan State, honestly. Both teams don't really have high expectations, but both teams could be halfway decent. And after that, you got Prairie View A&M, Boston College on the road. And then these next 4 games, the middle part of your season, is easily the most difficult part. You got Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, and Michigan there as your middle 4 games. All 4 of these teams could be, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if these were your top 4 teams in the Big Ten this season. Oregon on the road is going to be brutal. Ohio State, I really could see winning the conference. Michigan on the road is no joke. And even Iowa this season could be pretty good. So those 4 games are especially brutal, but in November, there is some optimism there. Indiana, Illinois, Purdue, and Rutgers to finish out the season. So looking at your first month or so, Florida Atlantic, I do think is kind of a close game. I do think it's going to be kind of a bumpy start to the season. I do think you find a way against FAU, but with just this being such a different team in 2024, I wouldn't be surprised if things looked pretty rough for this team in September. Maryland on the road, I mean, Maryland's not going to be a bad team. I do see them being a 6-8 win team this season. I do think some are kind of sleeping on Maryland a bit. So going on the road there, I do want to favor the Terps to win that one, but that's one of those games that's kind of a toss-up. Prairie View A&M's pretty easy to get a nice win there, and then Boston College on the road. Really not expecting too much out of them. So I do have you 3-1 going into the Ohio State game. These next 4 games, I just have to put all these in red. I do think you lose each of these. Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan especially. These 3 teams they could be all top 10 teams in the country. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Michigan. despite them being a much different team this season. I mean, everyone sees Harbaugh off to the NFL and thinks Michigan's going to fall off. They could still be a pretty strong team this season. So you consider that. You consider going to Oregon and Ohio State at home. I mean, those are going to be some really difficult matchups. So if you can pull off a nice win there, it'd more than likely be against Iowa. But there's several opportunities here for Michigan State to maybe have a chance for a big upset. But I do have you 3-5 going into November, which I really wouldn't be surprised if 3-5 was the case and 3-5 doesn't look good. But November's got some very winnable games. I think Indiana's a very beatable team. Same with Purdue. Both of those games should be, I would say, closer wins, but I do think you find a way there. Illinois on the road, they're going to have a strong defense, I think. Their offense, though, is going to be terrible. I think Illinois is a very beatable team as well, but I do have you at least dropping that one. I think you at least lose one game in November, but I do think you can definitely win 3 of your last 4 there in the month of November. Rutgers, though, I will say Rutgers is usually terrible, but this season could be an exception. I wouldn't be surprised if Rutgers maybe had a somewhat strong season, got up to 7 or 8 wins. They have a very manageable schedule, so when you consider that too, they could get to 8 or 9 this season, and I would not be surprised. But I think Michigan State's in a favorable position against them, so I would say this team gets up to 6 wins. And I will say that as well. For Michigan State, everything considered the past couple of seasons, if this team can get to a bowl game and maybe win it, I would say that's a really successful season and a sign for a very bright future for the Spartans. But you look at the range, I would say the ceiling's 8 wins this season. 8 wins is going to be pretty tough to do, though, especially when you consider those middle 4 games there. All 4 of them are just going to be brutal. But if you can get to 8 wins, I would say you probably will have won one of those games or upset one of those teams. I would say the floor is 3-9, but the odds of this team only getting 3 wins is really low. I feel like that's your worst case scenario, but overall, I'm pretty optimistic for Michigan State. I think 6 wins is very much within reach for this team, but with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name is Evan, this is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.